Hello, I'm Adriana Nickell, and these are my parting thoughts. So, these are the Fillmores, and I believe that this quote from their What Does Text Complexity Mean for English Learners and Language Minority Students article best synthesized what I've learned in this course. That we have to go beyond vocabulary and making complex text attainable for our students has to begin with us looking at our beliefs. So let's do that. So a belief that was solidified for me is this one: the fostering academic interactions is important. I think I used to think more of just like Kagan structures and sprinkling those in. Like for me, that was academic interaction, but now I know it's much more than that, and I understand the magnitude of its value. So, at the beginning of the course, we all made a visual defining literacy, and a common theme of those visuals was literacy isn't just about reading and writing, it's listening and speaking as well. So the middle box is by Rebecca Albert, and she wrote the following about speaking: conversation helps. Then we read an article about the predictors of success in learning to read, and oral language literacy was one of those predictors. So that's that green box on the right from Kaufman. And then more recently, we read Zweier's chapter 8 about how to foster academic interactions. And this sentence in the beginning of the chapter really resonated with me when he said that, doing all of this is what makes learning stick. Because I'm always that just caught my attention right away when I read that, because I'm always after ways to get learning to stick for my students. So fostering academic interactions is important because it helps learning stick, it helps students process, and it's a critical component of literacy development. So ways I want to put this in practice. Zweier's book was full of strategic practices to foster academic interactions. And the ones that stuck with me the most are providing students with the purpose of the academic interactions we have in class. So it's such a simple thing to do, but it's so impactful. And I think I don't always give my students a purpose for having these academic interactions. And so I've already been coaching teachers and providing purpose for academic interactions they use in their lessons in their classes. Next thing I want to do is make sure I'm modeling what effective academic interactions look like. So I just after reading all of Zweier's stuff, I realized it's not fair to our students that we assume they know how to participate in conversational discourse. So we really need to model it. And I've already used that first bullet, that if teacher, student A, and then the class works together, student B. I used that while I was like modeling a lesson for a new teacher. And I will include the use of interactions to teach academic communications in my lesson planning. So just being like really purposeful about which one of these 4 like communication skills I want to emphasize like every day in my lesson plans. An important belief that I'll keep in my heart and I really plan to advocate strongly for this, is the belief that all students deserve interaction with complex texts. So this belief was really etched on my heart after reading the week 4 materials. In Zweier's chapter 1 summary, he writes that content learning and complex language go hand in hand. And so we're limiting the content learning of our ELs by not providing them with more interactions with complex texts. Similarly, from the Fillmores, I learned that easy texts prevent English learners from discovering how language works in academic discourse. And how is that fair if this is precisely what they need to master these skills to succeed in school and career? And then more specifically, the Common Core document really went into depth about how interaction with complex text is the gateway to success in college, most careers, and adulthood. So if we want our students to be intelligent and informed citizens of society, we better get them reading some complex texts. In practice, I want to lead students through a weekly discussion focused on that juicy sentence activity we read about in the Fillmore article, as well as in the Common Core document. I think that was really I think it can be really impactful. I want to make sure I'm using complex texts that are complex for like some of these various reasons, like the qualitative dimensions, the quantitative dimensions, and or like reader and task considerations. So I might not choose texts that are always complex in all three areas at once, but I think that's okay for the kids to kind of scaffold in the dimensions in which the texts are complex. And then I want to advocate for this belief at the top of my slide through my coaching. So, when I'm working with teachers, I really want to help them plan for text complexity use in their classrooms. And then I'd like to provide PD around supporting our English learners, like interaction with complex texts. So overall, I just really plan for making a case for complex texts while I'm having like conversations with teachers. Okay. And for me, I learned a lot from the unpacking standards activity, and I think this is one of those things that the district and our district has demanded we do, but we really haven't been given a good process to unpack standards. We're just told like you need to unpack standards, and they tell our principal that, and our principal hasn't necessarily known what that means. So for me, this finally made sense and gave me a process to go with the term unpacking standards. So at the beginning of Erica Lee's video about the process, she talks about how unpacking standards helps teachers think about the critical language and content learning that students need to be successful. Then through the All Things assessment component of the Solution Tree website, they had an article about the purpose for unpacking standards. So that's keeps the focus on all students learning at high levels. And my favorite quote there is in the middle, like teachers who do the work to unpack standards, they're the ones who understand them. And I also liked both of those were written by Nielsen. That was a Solution Tree article. They also gave a process for unpacking standards that was similar to the one we went through in our course. And our staff for next year, part of their PD is going to be unpacking Colorado's 2020 standards. So I'm excited to use components of like what we did in our course this year with my peers and help lead them through that. And I plan on, asking them, I don't know exact details yet, but to probably like highlight the key verbs and nouns and adjectives and think about like what prior knowledge do our students need for this, and also the language functions and form. But I was thinking about that, this goal, and I think in addition, they'll really need support in what language functions and language forms are. We did get into like functions this year with the staff in writing language objectives. And so now I think they're ready for that next step of all these different forms of language. And I think that will help them with unpacking their 2020 standards and thinking about the language involved in their standards. Thanks for a great course.